Hello, everyone, and welcome to a quick episode of Trek Canon, Bootleg Edition. So, today I wanted to talk a little bit about why I personally think there's a disconnect between legacy or classic Star Trek and new Star Trek. Anything from 2008, 9 on, or the Kurtzman or J.J. Abrams track. Now, I didn't want to have this video mirror or mimic a lot of the videos that's been made already surrounding why people don't like new Trek and how they feel about new Trek as compared to old Trek, and all of these types of all of these various different reasons and all that kind of stuff. What I will do is come from a different perspective, because there is a perspective in Star Trek that we can come from in canon to let us know why there's a difference between legacy Star Trek and new Star Trek, and it's given in the mission statement of Star Trek. So let's talk about the mission statement of Star Trek and talk about why it is that there's a difference in between legacy and new Trek. So first, what is the mission statement of Star Trek? Okay. It has a 5-year mission statement, actually. And in that 5-year mission statement, they have a few things that they want to do. It's a few things in this 5-year mission that we're going to try to get done. All right. Now, the first part of that 5-year mission, right, of that, mission statement is to explore strange new worlds. Okay. Now, when you think about Star Trek, classic Star Trek, and when you compare it to new Star Trek, when we think about exploring strange new worlds, when we think about Vulcan, when we think about the Shore Leave planet, when we think about Kronos, right? When we think about the planet where the Medusans was hanging out, or the planet with the gangsters of Triskelion, or the planet with the actual mob gangsters. When you think about all of these planets that Captain Kirk went to, when you think about all of the planets that the next generation introduced us to, Beta Z, right? We learned about Meridian. We learned about Risa, right? We learned about Trill. We learned about Cardassia and Bajor, right? We explored these worlds, right? Think about it. What worlds in New Trek can you guys name? What actual worlds do you guys from New Trek, any New Trek, can you guys be like, oh, okay, this is the characteristics of that planet? All right. Hell, it was episodes in Star Trek. Think about the episode Wink of an Eye. All right. Think about that episode. We only seen that species once in canon, right? And we know way more about their world than we know about, say, somebody like Saru from Star Trek Discovery. Now, let's continue on with the mission statement to seek out new life, right? Now, think about all those worlds I just mentioned. Now, just setting those worlds aside, think about the new life that we found in Star Trek, the original, from the original series all the way up, to Deep Space Nine. Ugly bags of mostly water, right? Armis, right? We found the dude, man, who had people's up inside that dark space, man, experimenting on them. We learned about the Zindi. We learned about the Okampa and the caretakers, man. We learned about the prophets and the Pa Wraith. We learned about more about the Cleon Society. We learned the rules of acquisition from the Ferengi. Hell, we met exocomps, man, androids. Like, look, there were so many cultures that we came across, and we learned so much about them. Hell, Klingons got their own language, right? Now, think about the cultures and new life forms that we came across in New Trek. What they call it, the Lathanites or something like that. What do we really know about them? Why are they hanging out so much on Earth? Okay, we got old girl from Strange New Worlds hanging out on Earth as a Lathanite. We got Ake, who was hanging out on Earth as a Lathanite. Hell, look, I'm gonna tell you, my boy. What was his name? Methuselah. Yeah, Requiem for Methuselah. I think he was a Lathanite, but that's besides the point. Anyway, right? We have whatever number one was, but we didn't really get into their species. We know that they are a species of augments, but okay, let me see. Saru, he was about the only person that we really kind of got into as far as his world and his culture, really, right? Like everybody else, hell, it was most of the series, it was most of the whole series, not the season, most of the whole series before I even knew most of the bridge crew name from Discovery. All right. And you know, half of the season of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Okay. The only reason I knew Pike and Una and all of them was because they were legacy characters, right? So when we get into Star Trek Strange New Worlds, you know, we don't really, if we are introduced to a new life form or a new civilization, we don't really go into it. Think about what was his name? The fish dude from Star Trek Starfleet Academy, right? The one that's embarrassed to be in his normal form. As a matter of fact, all of his race that we see, even when we went to that small wedding on his planet, which really wasn't his planet, it was one of the moons, right? They didn't even turn into their natural state. Like we didn't even really get to figure out what's going on with them. You know, Genesis, we know a little bit about her, but what about the species that she's a hybrid of? That being said, it's a lot of hybrids in Star Trek Starfleet Academy. Almost everybody is hybrids, and instead of hybridizing known races and trying to explore how those races, you know, mix and blend, and how those cultures, right. We got a whole galaxy, man, of people who we can be introduced to, right? That of characters that we can be introduced to that wouldn't be necessary. Okay. Even look, let me tell you something. We can always talk about the interpersonal relationships or the character writing when it comes to New Trek as well, because not only New Trek is it not following what the actual mission statement of classic and legacy Trek is built upon, right? Is not only following that, right? The character development, the depth of the characters, all right, uh, is very shallow, is very one dimensional. When you think of people like Garrick, even people like Kai Wynn, for all of her flaws and how bad of a person she was, right? Think of how three dimensional her character was. A lot of people say that Gul Dukat, you know, was one of the best villains in Star Trek. Why? Because at one moment, Gul Dukat was a supervillain, right? He ran Terra Nor and all that stuff. The next moment, he's an independent freedom fighter, right? Helping and assisting and being allies with with the Federation against, you know, the Klingons and all this kind of stuff, right? The next minute, he done tore away from all of that, right? And got a God complex, a hero complex, right? Next minute, he's broken, don't know who he is, man, and took on the identity of a Bajoran. Next minute, man, he trying to be some cult leader, man, on the other station, on actual Terra Nor, right? Just trying to lead Bajoran, like, Gul Dukat has so many facets to him. Gary has so many facets to him. Kirk has so many facets to him. The relationship between Kirk, Bones, and Spock, right? The relationships between Uhura and Scotty, right? The relationships between Geordi, Wesley, and Data, right? Even between people like Dr. Crusher and Troy, right? When you think about these types of relationships, it's dynamic. Okay, it's not just, oh, okay, well, we're having our little problem then the next. No, it's dynamic. You can see that they have history and all this type of stuff. Another thing with New Trek is the profanity. I don't understand how profanity was pretty much gone by this time in Star Trek, the original series, right? And all of a sudden, you know, in New Trek, we're going back to, you know, profanity, those types of cuss words. Now, if we're going to use cuss words, okay, then modify them to go with the times. Make up some new ones, all right? Make up some that's modern, some words and statements or phrases that mean, you know, that are profane for that time. I shouldn't be hearing the same slurs that I'm hearing now 1,000 years in the future, say in Starfleet Academy, right? That's like calling somebody a scallywag now. Like they'll look at you like, scallywag, what are you talking about? Right? So that thing, right? So I do understand what they were trying to do with Star Trek Starfleet Academy, right? And I really did like uh, a lot of the episodes that were in the first season of Star Trek Starfleet Academy. But was it Star Trek? And I'm gonna have to say no, based on the mission statement of Star Trek. It wasn't Star Trek, all right? Because we didn't seek out new life. We didn't have a mission, a 5-year mission or whatever kind of mission that we have, whether the mission is to get home, from the Delta Quadrant, to the Alpha Quadrant, whether the mission is to bring Bajor into the Federation, and and avert the war with the Dominion. If the mission is, go out here and try this 5-year mission, it's not working out too well because we keep getting beat up. Oh, by the way, we gotta figure out this war with the Zindi. Like no matter what the mission is, they had a mission. What's the mission with New Trek? What is its mission statement? How is it abiding by the mission? And because of that, right? Because of New Trek and Starfleet Academy not abiding by Star Trek's stated mission statement, that's why I'd be like, oh, okay, it's entertaining, and everything like that. But is it Star Trek to me? Does it feel like Star Trek to me? Does the science feel like Star Trek to me? Does the technobabble feel like Star Trek to me? Does the themes feel like Star Trek to me? Does the interactions, the characters, the worlds, the environments, does this feel like Star Trek to me? Does the story feel like Star Trek? And I'm gonna have to say no, but it was and had some entertaining episodes. But yeah, Star Trek, no. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you guys thought. If maybe I'm probably missing a head by examining this from the mission statement of Star Trek, or if I should probably forget about that and just be like, ah, man, that was 60 years ago, man. Let's move on from the foundation of what built Trek, and start establishing a new foundation. But if it's a new foundation, is it Star Trek?